I am making a Pendulum Magician deck profile. I just figured it's been a while since my last Magician deck profile, so I figured I'd make a new one. And it has been hilarious in testing just because I how I realized there's one card in this deck that I never realized was actually good against decks like Sky Striker. But my own version, my playstyle at least, is geared towards making the Supreme King Zark at any cost because Zark is one of my favorite pendulum monsters ever since Maximum Crisis was first released, and I was able to surprise the one guy at my locals who I usually don't beat just because he was sitting next to me and he hears me say summon Supreme King Zark back when no one realized you can be summoned off a Miracle Synchro Fusion. But anyway, that's just my reasoning for why Zark's one of my favorite monsters. So starting off with the Monsters in the Magician deck, I play the one copy of Time Gazer Magician. This card is usually placed in your pendulum scale either by activating from your hand while you control no monsters, since it can't be placed in your pendulum scale if you control monsters, or off of the effect of another monster in the deck, Chronograph Sorcerer. But its pendulum ability just makes stuff if a pendulum monster battles, your opponent can't activate traps till the end of the damage step. Also, if you don't have a magician in your other scale, its pendulum scale becomes 4. And you don't usually summon it as a monster, so I actually don't know what its monster effect is. Okay, it's bad. But then moving on, I play 3 copies of Harmonizing Magician. Harmonizing's pendulum ability is that while it's in the pendulum scale, all monsters you control gain 100 attack points for each different face-up magician pendulum monster in your extra deck. But its monster effect is it cannot be used as fusion, synchro, XEs, or pendulum material. Or pendulum. Fusion, synchro, XEs material. My bad, I was just thinking of summoning mechanics. Unless every other card for the summoning is a magician. But if it's pendulum summoned, you can special summon a magician pendulum monster from your extra deck. From your main deck, if I can stop getting tongue-tied. However, that monster is banished when it leaves the field. And then Harmonizing Magician cannot be pendulum summoned from your extra deck. Then I play 3 copies of Purple Poison Magician. Purple Poison Magician's pendulum effect is if a dark spellcaster battles, you can have that dark spellcaster gain 1200 attack points and then it self-destructs. And then its monster effect is if this card is destroyed by battle or card effects, you can destroy one face-up card in the field. So if you activate its effect to boost a monster by 12, it'll destroy itself, and since it was destroyed, its monster effect will trigger because it says this card. But I only specify that because I was playing this deck in a tournament, but the judge didn't know how the deck is supposed to work, so he ruled it against me when I really needed it to go off because it was against Invoked. Because I was going to destroy their field spell so they couldn't get the Alistair search. So I was a bit salty about that, but I ended up winning anyway. Then I play 3 copies of Double Iris Magician. Double Iris Magician has the pendulum affecting target dark spellcaster, and if it for that turn, if it battles a monster, then the opponent takes double the damage they normally would, and then it self-destructs. Its monster effect is if this card is destroyed, then you can search your deck for 1 pendulum graph card. Then I play 3 copies of Wisdom Eye Magician. Wisdom Eye Magician's pendulum ability is if you have a magician in your other scale, you can have it destroy itself. So then take a pendulum magician from your deck and place it face up in your pendulum scale. So if you have this and something like Oath Dragon Magician or Purple Poison in your other scale, you can destroy this and then take a Time Gazer from your deck and place it in your pendulum scale. The only reason I like Time Gazer being the pendulum scale is just because it's level 3, so it's awkward to have in play. And then I do play 2 copies of White Wing Magician. White Wing Magician's pendulum ability is once per turn when an activated card or effect resolves that targets a dark spellcaster, you control, you can negate the effect and then it will destroy itself. And its monster effect is if its pendulum summoned card is used for a synchro summon, banish it. Oh yeah, also, Double Iris is treated as a pendulum dragon. Pearl Poison is treated as a fusion dragon. White Wing Magician is treated as an Xyz dragon. And then Black Fang Magician is treated as a Xyz dragon. This only matters for Chronograph Sorcerer's ability. But Black Fang Magician's pendulum ability is it can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, have its attack, and then destroys itself. And its monster effect is if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target one dark spellcaster in your graveyard and summon it back to your field. Then to finish off the level 4 monsters, I play 2 copies of Performer Pal Skullcrabat Joker. This card, the only effect I actually care about with this card is when it's normal summoned, you get to search your deck for any Odd Eyes, Performer Pal, or Magician monster. Or Magician Pendulum monster. So, it searches for those, but it cannot search for another copy of itself. So, I'm really hoping the upcoming ban list will put Skullcrabat Joker back to 3. Which, if it does, I'm prepared. Then I play 3 copies of Chronograph Sorcerer. Chronograph Sorcerer has the effect of if a card or cards on your field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can summon Chronograph Sorcerer from your hand as well as another monster. But its other ability is you can banish itself and then a Fusion Dragon, Synchro Dragon, Xyz Dragon, and Pendulum Dragon from cards on your face-up in your monster zone, hand, or banished as cost to then fusion summon a Supreme King Zark. And then its pendulum ability is during your main phase, you can have it blow itself up in your pendulum scale to then take a time to use a magician from your deck and either add to your hand or place it face up in your pendulum scale. And then one of the best monsters to have for your low scale in this deck is one of the 3 copies of Oath Dragon Magician. Its pendulum abilities, if you have Magician in your other pendulum scale, then you can target one face-up Magician pendulum monster in your extra deck and add to your hand. You can only activate and resolve this effect if a Magician pendulum monster is in your other scale. I don't actually know what its monster effect does, just because I've never actually summoned it and activated its ability. But its monster effect is, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one Magician pendulum monster or Odd Eyes monster in your graveyard, except for itself. Add it to your hand. You can only use this effect of Oath Dragon Magician once per turn. But you aren't normally summoning this card unless you already have another copy of it, or you're planning on summoning a monster from the extra deck. That is it for the monsters. Moving on to the spells. I play 3 copies of Secret Village of the Spellcasters, just because this is a primarily spellcaster-based deck. So pretty much what this card does is, if you control a spellcaster and your opponent doesn't, then they can't activate spells. But if you don't have a spellcaster, then you can't activate spells. Then I play 3 copies of Pendulum Call. This just lets you discard a card, then search your deck for 2 different Pendulum Magician monsters. But when you activate this card, or you can't activate the turn you've activated. Remember, its wording was weird. I just randomly remembered it. Okay, you cannot activate it during the turn you've activated Magician Monster's Pendulum effect in your Pendulum scale. But when it is activated, you then can make it so that your Pendulum scales cannot be destroyed by cards or effects till the end of the next turn. I think that's really the only main thing. It's just isn't because you can discard 1 card and get your Pendulum Scales. Then the card I realized was great against Sky Striker just because I didn't realize its protection effect. I play 3 copies of Star Pendulum Graph. Star Pendulum Graph has the effect of a Magician Pendulum monster in your monster zone or Pendulum scale is destroyed. You can then search your deck for a Pendulum Magician of a different name. And while it's face up on the field, your opponent cannot target your spellcasters with spell effects, which means they can't Widow Anchor, they can't Afterburner. And I want to say that's it. Oh yeah, they also can't Eagle Booster, but they wouldn't want to Eagle Booster your stuff anyway. But the important part is just Sky Strikers can't Widow Anchor or Afterburner your spellcasters. And then to finish off the spells, I play 2 copies of Duelist Alliance. This just lets you take a card from your deck to your hand that has Pendulum in its name from your deck to your hand. And this can actually search for double Iris Magician since it's always traded as a Pendulum Dragon. And then for the traps, I play 3 copies of Time Pendulum Graph. Time Pendulum Graph is probably one of the best control cards in the game that I can think of, just because of how it can target. You activate it, you target 1 card in your opponent's field and 1 Magician, either in your monster zone, or face-up monster zone, or pendulum zone. Destroy both, but if it wasn't unable to destroy both of the targets for any reason, it also lets you send 1 card your opponent controls to the graveyard. So this is good because if you have used it with Pendulum Call during your opponent's turn after you activate Pendulum Call is protecting your Pendulum Scale from being destroyed, so this will destroy 1 card in your opponent's field and then send another card. Or you can use other cards from your extra deck, such as Time Star Magician, to then protect your Pendulum Scale from being destroyed, so you can then send a card from your opponent's field to the grave. The best part is its sending effect does not actually target. That is it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, I play 1 copy of Raiders Knight, just because sometimes you need a really big monster out, and Raiders Knight can get you to that. But it requires 2 dark monsters to be Xyz summoned, and then once per turn you can use a material from it. Summon a Raid Raptor, Phantom Knight, or Xyz Dragon that's 1 rank higher from your extra deck by using itself as material, where you then transfer its materials. Then I play 2 copies of Time Star Magician. Once per turn you can use 1 material to then search your deck for a Dark Spellcaster. And then if a Pendulum monster or if a Pendulum card or cards will be destroyed by battle or card effect, then you can send 1 card or Pendulum Magician. I don't know why I'm getting so tongue-tied. But you can send 1 Pendulum Magician from your deck to the graveyard instead. So if you're attacking and you have this with 4 or 5 Pendulum monsters in attack position, and your opponent either to attack and your opponent activates Mirror Force, this can send a Magician to the graveyard to protect your Pendulum monsters from being destroyed by it. Then I play 1 copy of Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. Just detach 2 materials to then take half of an opponent's monster's attack points. I was only in here because I couldn't think of another card to put in that actually be useful. Probably would have added something like Cross Sheep, since you do Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz. That's actually not a bad idea. This is going to play Cross Sheep now. But I then play 1 copy of Supreme King Dragon Dark Rebellion. Dark Rebellion requires 2 level 4 Dark Pendulum monsters, but if it battles an opponent's monster, you can use 1 material. The opposing monster has attack points reduced to 0, and then Dark Rebellion then takes that monster's original attack points and adds to itself to the end of the damage step. Or until the end of the battle phase, I mean. So this can be really good at getting over big monsters, like if your opponents already used their Dragoon Negate. Then Dark Rebellion can reduce Dragoon's attack points to 0, and then it'll increase its own attack to 5,500. Then I play 1 copy of Perform Mage Trapeze Magician, just because some of my locals still likes to play Trickstar. So I play this just to give them the finger, more or less. But Trapeze Magician has the effect of while it's in play, you cannot take damage if it's equal to or less than its own attack points. So if your opponent attacks you directly with something like Legul, which only has 300 attack points, you won't take any damage, because in order for you to take damage, it has to be 2,500 or more, or it has to be more than 2,500 points of damage, which decks like Trickstar can't really do in 1 effect, because even their best thing in making you drawing 6 That only does 1200 damage. So as long as this is in play, they can't really hurt you at all. But also has the effect you can, during either player's turn, as a quick effect, you can use one material. So then target one monster in the field. It gets to attack twice during that turn's battle phase. However, it's destroyed at the end of the turn. So you can actually use Trapeze Magician if you're going to live the attack to then make an opponent's monster fail to attack twice, but then it will die. And then for the big boss monster, the Xyz monsters, I play Arc Rebellion Xyz Dragon. This will only ever be summoned in this deck off of Raider Knight's effect. But its effect is as long as it has an Xyz material, or an Xyz monster's material, then it can activate its ability, which is it can detach one material to then negate the effects of all other face-up monsters in play, and then gains their attack points, but you can only attack with Arc Rebellion that turn. And then while it's face-up on field and was Xyz summoned, it cannot be destroyed by card effects. I want to say it has another effect. Nope, and you can only use each of its effects once per turn. And to finish off the Xyz monsters, I do play the one copy of Norito, the Moral Leader. This is just because I play 6 level 6 spellcasters, so I figured why not play a single copy of Norito. But Norito just has the effect of, if your opponent activates a spell or trap, you can detach one material to negate that spell or trap's activation, and if you do, destroy it. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I always thought it then burned your opponent for 800 points of damage. Moving on to the Synchros, I play one copy of Supreme King Dragon Clearwing. When this card's Synchro summoned, it can destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls. And if it battles an opponent's monster, you can negate the attack just before the damage step to then destroy the opposing monster, and then your opponent takes damage equal to that monster's attack points. And then its other effect is if it's in the graveyard, or no, it's in the graveyard, you can tribute to summon up to 2 Supreme King Dragon Dark Worms from your extra deck, but you don't ever use that effect. Supreme King Dragon Dark Rebellion has the same effect, but again, you don't use that effect. It's just overall bad. It would be decent if pendulums weren't restricted like they are, but since they are, it's just bad. Then I play the one copy of Scrap Dragon, because sometimes you do want your monsters destroyed. This lets you target one card in your field and one card in your opponent's field, destroy both targets. Then I play one copy of Ignister Prominence, the Blasting Draco Slayer. This card's only effect in this deck is you can target a pendulum card or a pendulum monster on the field, destroy that target. If you do, shuffle one card your opponent controls back into the deck. I just like how that's non-targeting removal, because the only thing it targets is its destruction target. Then I play the one copy of Void Ogre Dragon. Just if you have no cards in your hand, then once per turn it's a spell trap negate. One copy of Beals of the Diabolic Dragons, just because Beals is actually kind of hard to get over every once in a while. I've actually won games because of it. It can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. If you take damage while this card's in play, it gains life points equal to the damage you took. The overall is just a 3,000 body that can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. And if you take damage, it gets bigger over time. And then for fusion monsters, I play 2 copies of Supreme King Dragon Zark. Zark is probably the most powerful monster in this deck, just because of its monster effect being it can only be fusion summoned, which makes me sad. Just because if you are able to pendulum summon a level 12 monster, I feel like you should be able to pendulum summon Zark back. But when it's fusion summoned, its ability destroys all cards on your opponent's side of the field. If it can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects. If it destroys a monster in battle, then you can summon a Supreme King Dragon monster from your hand, deck, graveyard, or extra deck, ignoring summoning conditions. I was thinking ignore summoning conditions. Let's see. Okay, no, it does not summon ignoring summoning conditions, and it does not summon from your hand or graveyard. Which is fine though, because it's only summon targets are from your extra deck, so that's still fine. And then if it's destroyed in your monster zone, then you can place it in your pendulum zone. And its pendulum effect is once per turn, if your opponent searches for a card or cards from their deck, you can destroy that card or cards. And then all your opponent's activated Fusion, Synchro, Xyz effects. I think it's just Fusion. Yeah, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz effects your opponent control. Blech, I can't word. But while it's in the pendulum zone, then all your opponent's activated Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monster effects are negated. That's why I just love it, because your opponent kills it and you have an open zone. Oh no. Guess I'll just prevent you from using Synchro, Fusion, or Xyz. But that is it for my Magician deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, or any ideas of decks I see make, or decks I see face each other, feel free to comment those below. Thanks for watching.